welcome to part
Yes.
number 2, which is actually
Part number 3.
3 if you're counting the intro.
But it's our second molecule type.
That's what I'm. So it's part number 2, which is part number 3. It's like, I don't know. It's about lipids, and you're gonna love it.
Okay. Now that we got that out of the way, you know you're in the right place. It's about lipids. So lipids, again, yeah, is our second molecule we're talking about. The first point here, all of them are hydrophobic. So if you want to break down that word, hydro means water, and phobic means fear. So if you think about phobias, like people have arachnophobia, or like tryptophobia, the fear of small holes, right? That's a classic one going around these days. But it means fear of water then. So hydrophobic, meaning they are water fearing, or kind of want to avoid water, right? So if you think about, Chemeter's got an example here. We have some water on the bottom of the test tube. We've got some oil on the top, and they don't want to mix. They're not going to mix. Even if Chemeter tries to shake it on up, they don't want to mix, and we'd see those layers reform. Give it a little time. Give it a little moment.
I shake so well.
Yeah, I got to tone it back, man. Okay, while we're waiting on that, we'll talk today about the different types of lipids, which are going to be fats and oils, phospholipids, and then steroids.
Yeah. There's a rendering of what Chemeter used to look like back in his college days.
Yeah, you have children, and then your body just kind of, it goes.
It's a slippery slope.
Yeah.
All right, so I'll do fats and oils. These are probably the lipids that we're all most familiar with. And for both plants and animals, fats and oils, we use these. One of the main things we use them for is energy storage. We also use them for insulation and cushioning. So energy storage, think about, polar bears putting on fat for the winter. Okay, I am ready for winter right now. I've got plenty of energy storage going on right now. But you can't see that because you're only seeing the top half of me. Bottom half is large. All right. Insulation. They also, you can think about it, polar bears, whales, all that extra fat around the outside provides good insulation to keep energy in, thermal energy, keep you warm. Cushioning. This is not so that you can do a chest bump with somebody and not get injured. We actually need cushioning around all of our internal organs. Okay, when you do dissections later in the year, you're going to see this. There's going to be fat inside the cavities that are actually cushioning these internal organs, and that's why if your fat levels get too low, it can actually be dangerous for you. That's the problem with anorexia. That's why any of you guys who are wrestlers, or if you know some wrestlers, they have to do the caliper test and figure out what their fat percentage is before the season starts, and the WIA sets a lower limit to how low they can get their body fat percentage, because if they get below that, it can actually be pretty dangerous and cause a lot of longer lasting issues. And so that's why that's there. It's that cushioning is not a minor thing for us. As far as energy storage, fats and oils are significantly more efficient than sugar. Now, sugar's got tons of energy stored up in the chemical bonds that hold it together between all those carbons and hydrogens and oxygens and that ring structure of glucose. Which is great, but it's kind of bulky. Fats are much more compact. We'll show some graphics of those later, but they really pack their chemical bonds into a tight, small space. And so that means that fats and oils are more efficient and more compact and easier to transport and store. You generally see, as far as like difference between plants and animals, plants tend to store more of their energy as starches, a polysaccharide, a carbohydrate, and animals tend to store them more as fats and oils. Big part of that is we move. We have to carry our energy storage around with us. Okay? If I have the amount of energy storage I currently have, but in the form of starch, I would be enormous. I would not be fitting through the door in my room or the door behind me. I'd be like a small baby elephant kind of size. Okay? You can play the baby elephant song and whatever if you want, but that's how big I would be. And so animals, it's much more advantageous for us to store our energy as fats because it is so much more efficient for us as far as energy storage, and it gives us the extra insulation and cushioning that we need as well. So it's a very useful substance as long as you don't have too much.
There's always a trick to it. Another interesting, unique use or function of lipids is I wanted to put it but in this
Come on, Keller.
I'm so
Spit
excited.
it out.
No, in this specific example of phospholipids, phospholipids are a special type of lipid. They have two parts to them, and there's a diagram I think that pops up here. Yep, they have a hydrophilic head and a hydrophobic tail, or actually two hydrophobic tails. As Ms. Ripley said before, hydrophobic means afraid of water, fear of water, so they don't want to mix, which this also separated out here.
There we go.
Yeah, I know. We're not just, we're not lying. So there's part of the molecule
Not about that anyway.
there's part of the molecule that does not want to be in the water. Part of the molecule does want to be in the water, and that's what hydrophilic means. Hydro, again, is water. Philic is for loving. If you think about Philadelphia, is the city of brotherly love, right? That's Philly and Delphi, brother. I think that's something like that, isn't it? Anyway, so hydrophilic means they likes to be in water. So basically what we've got is a molecule with kind of a split personality. Part of it wants to be in water really, really bad. Part of it does not want to be in water, which causes these molecules, when you've got a bunch of them, to do something peculiar. They'll arrange themselves into either like globules or sheets, membranes that have the hydrophilic heads out on one side, the hydrophobic tails stuffed in the middle, and then hydrophilic heads on the other side, which doesn't sound too amazing until, yeah, you can go ahead and start the video, until you realize that's exactly what the cell membranes, the cells that make up you, their membranes are made out of these phospholipids. And this video is going to show us how that arrangement is, what they're arranged like.
Between the living machinery of the inner and the harsh conditions of the outside world stands the cell's plasma membrane. As crucial as this barrier is,
these are the hydrophilic heads.
Push it and watch it move. Poke hard enough, and
in between, those are the hydrophobic tails.
The lipid molecules of the membrane naturally.
We've got. It always boggles my mind that the forces that are holding your cell membranes together are these hydrophobic hydrophilic interactions, right? So the membranes are very, very stable. You can pull them, you can tug them, you can push them, and they will return to that original arrangement. Now, there are other things embedded in the cell membrane that will help hold the structure too, but fundamentally it's that hydrophobic hydrophilic interaction of these phospholipids. Again, we're going to talk more deeply about these later on in the school year when we talk about cell transport.
So steroids is our last category here, and typically when you hear that, you're thinking of like professional athletes, right, and the scandals of using, steroids, or yeah, Mr. Hamele's scandal a couple of years ago about using steroids, Okay, but steroids, we're actually kind of thinking in your body anyways, more about hormones. So if you think about things like testosterone, estrogen, things like that in your body that are gonna affect either our growth and kind of development or just kind of sending signals and messages throughout your body. One example of that would be cholesterol. You hear about kind of that all the time, whether you have like high or low cholesterol. And cholesterol is a lipid, and we said all of them are hydrophobic, meaning they don't want to mix with water. So these things can kind of build up in your body and be in your body for a long time because they're not going to be really dissolving in the water or anything like that, kind of in your body's different fluids. And so what can happen is if you have a bunch of cholesterol, it's going to potentially be building up in your arteries then, and you could have clogged arteries, which leads to not so good things, potentially having, like blood clots, heart attacks, things like that. It's not good. You don't want a lot of high cholesterol.
And as far as Ripley's talking about cholesterol too, this boils down to your diet. There are two basic categories of lipids. We've got saturated and unsaturated. You've probably heard of that before, or at least I hope you have. And you will notice these labeled on the side of food. It's on the nutrition label. So saturated fats versus unsaturated fats. And what we're talking about with what are they saturated with? They're saturated with the full number of hydrogens that they possibly could hold. That is
all of
on
this model, the big dark ones are carbon, These little ones are hydrogen, and the red ones are oxygen, just so you're aware. Yeah.
Thank you for pointing that out. And so you'll notice on the saturated one, it has the maximum number of hydrogen that it can have because it has all single bonds between the carbons on the backbone there. The unsaturated, you'll notice there's like a little gap down at the bottom there. Hamele's pointing it out. And that is missing a couple of hydrogen because instead of having bonds going to hydrogen, the two carbons there are sharing a double bond, which prevents them from bonding with some additional hydrogens. That doesn't seem like a big deal maybe, but it alters the shape of the molecule. So the unsaturated fats kink, and then the saturated fats are straight, and that causes their behaviors, the way that they act either on their own or within the body to change too. So saturated fats will be solid at room temperature. Things like butter and like animal fat, lard, they're solid. The unsaturated fats tend to be oils, liquid at room temperature. And so again, that's a small difference that makes a big difference. And so you talk about, like, we need all kinds of fats to some degree, but watching your diet as far as getting some healthier fats tend to be the unsaturated ones.
And if nobody has anything else to add, that is it for our section on lipids.
I told you it was going to be fun and that you were going to love it.
So that is lipids, guys. They're hydrophobic, fats and oils, hormones like steroids and phospholipids make up cell membranes.
Long-term energy storage.
Long-term energy storage. And we will see you on the flip side when we get into the real meat of this whole discussion, which is proteins.